Look at Hamlin and Harvick side by side. In any other year, these would be two drivers you'd expect to be right at the front, contending for the win.
Yes, what a cup race we did have. Now, sure, it might not have been everyone's cup of tea, but it was a strategy race to the end, and it was quite the show. This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. My name is Cameron Richardson, and joining me today, although we're recording tonight, the night before, is Sean Clark, known as Sean Stephen Clark on Twitter now, because he can't fix his Twitter handle correctly because he's not the Candid Clark anymore, as it says on his nameplate. Sean, why don't you go ahead and change that before we get started? But first off, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Was expecting a snoozer at Richmond, and it started off that way, but once the strategy started kicking in, it was a very entertaining race. And I just got to quickly say, they really nailed it having Chad Knaus in the booth. That was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, sure, the Fox production for pre-race and stuff is cringe this week, being the worst of all. I mean, we dedicated an entire segment to a watermelon seed that was on Ross Chastain's chinny chin chin after he won at Coda last Sunday. Yes, we humanized the watermelon seed. That's where we're at when it comes to pre-race shows. And
really
people
can't think of anything else.
And the NASCAR community wonders why other motorsports around the world go and laugh at NASCAR when they do stuff like this.
Yeah, you don't see F1 or IndyCar doing this. Like, what do, like, I want to know, what goes through NASCAR's head when they do something like that? Okay, F1, you have a great Sky Sports that breaks down battles at each individual corners. You have obviously a whole F1 intro package every year, but NASCAR does watermelon seeds, stand-up skits before the Las Vegas race.
Song, like whatever the Richmond song was right before the pre-race ceremony started.
Harvey can't rely on his 3 wins or whatever. Who wrote that? Like, seriously.
I don't know. I mean, it's de facto like WWE content, because this is the kind of stuff that you'd see on a Friday Night SmackDown or any type of Fox production for the WWE. It's out of control. But let's talk about the racing in general. Yes, for most people, I think those that don't really know the ins and outs of racing, it probably wasn't the most entertaining of races they've ever seen before. But I mean, this is the main problem with stage racing, and why I'm on the side of dumping just the caution in general. We just keep the points. You can still break it in the stages and give out points, but we don't need the cautions anymore, because coming into today, there were 5 cycles of green flag pit stops through 6 races. And today there were 7, 8 of them. And we had 2 or 3 of them just within the final stage. So a complete 180 change in how the racing played out at Richmond versus what we've seen at Daytona, at Las Vegas, at Phoenix, at Auto Club, at Coda. Completely different ball game. And for everyone, yeah, that's not going to be loved. But just with, 75 less horsepower than we had the last couple of years, and Richmond not being a very fast racetrack, this was bound to happen. I mean, you saw it in the Xfinity race the day before, and now in the Cup race, the same type of race played out. But in the end, you still had 2 pretty damn good finishes in general. But Sean, this was actually one of your first watches of Richmond, just because of how your work schedules played out. You haven't been able to check out a Cup Richmond race yet. So just overall thoughts on the track and just what you thought of covering today's race.
Well, I have covered truck and Xfinity races at Richmond before, and the main thing I always noticed was the bottom line was always the dominant line. And it wasn't a very fast track. And because of that, it didn't have the flair of Bristol or Martinsville, because Bristol is obviously a lot faster. And what's great about Martinsville is it's very thin, which forces a lot of bumping and running. Richmond is wide enough where you don't have to bump and run, but it's not fast enough like Bristol, where you don't get that high octane racing like we saw last September in some of the best racing I have seen in my 3 years covering motorsports. So with this, I wasn't expecting much. And well, it was still better than I was expecting. Now, this was my first full race cup coverage since the Daytona night race last year. Because yes, I did cover the Talladega race, but that was rain shortened. Still great though. So it was interesting to see. Like I said, the pre-show, Chad Canals was fantastic. He was the best part of this race. Hearing him break down all the strategies, predicting when cautions would happen, and how that messes up the stage pit strategy was fantastic. There's a reason this guy won how many like championships? What, 7? I believe it was 7. Like, yeah, there's a reason why this guy did it, because he is very intelligent. And even with this new car, he still was ahead of it. Even Clint Boyer was like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything because you clearly know better than I do. I thought that was great. And yeah, crew chiefs did amazing throughout the race. Strategy calls to put their drivers ahead of the other, like James Small pitting Truex first in stage 2 to get him in front, and he would go on to win stage 2. And would eventually get his first top 5 finish of the season. I love stuff like that. We see that in F1 too. In F1, we see a lot of pit strategies. For example, Bahrain Grand Prix, there was 2 and 3 stop races. That was strategy. I'm glad that I got to really see that in NASCAR. Because, for example, at Auto Club, where we were, almost every single pit stop was during a caution because there were so many of them, even after stages. So at Auto Club, we really didn't get to see green flag pit stops, but here, that's almost all we had. And I'm glad that there wasn't many race-related cautions that allowed the strategies to really pay off in full. That's another kind of racing. Yes, it's not the thrills that we saw in person at Daytona. No, it's not the driver-friendly track of Auto Club. And no, it isn't a road course which produced a banger last week. It's more old school. It's more intellectual, which, let's be real here, NASCAR's not known for being intellectual, but this race was, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and pretty much just the final stage at least came down to, okay, if you pit first or last, you're going to have an advantage. If you're first out, you're going to have your tires warmed up and you're going to be able to get to the front. But once that tire fall off happened and there was quick tire degradation with this new wheel here, you're going to find yourself in the back. But you would take it because you would be winning at the end of the stage. But when it came down to the end of the race, it was Byron and Truex on pit road first. Neither of them decided to pit. They decided to do a whole long run, and that didn't pan out well. And they were, you could argue, the 2 best cars of the day, but it doesn't matter who the 2 best cars of the day are. It matters who protected their tires, who delivered the right strategy, and that ended up being Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. And it was hilarious early on. Mike Joyce saying in stage 1, here's 2 guys that you would normally see running up front, but they just haven't done that recently. And who ends up being the top 2 at the end of the day? Oh, it was Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. Good win for Denny Hamlin after a terrible start to the season, doing it at one of his 2 home tracks on the circuit. So now this really brings up a question of, okay, are the main guys now back in it? Is it now the Hamlin and Harvick show? Truex is now up there. Larson ran well today. Is this going to be the tone now? It's going to be, okay, the veterans are now in it. We're getting to that point of the season where, okay, now we're going to know who our title contenders are. And Byron's up there. Chase Elliott's still running consistently. You can insert Byron and Bowman as well. Larson still has some ground to make up, even though he does have his win. There's still a lot of better performances that team needs to put out to really lock them in. They're locked in. I think they'll be fine when we get to the summer, but Larson's so far not there yet. But all of Joe Gibbs in the top 10, their best run of the season by far when they really struggled. I think coming in, they only had 2 top 10s all season from all 4 of their teams. So a good run today for them at Richmond. But Sean, overall in the Cup Series, how important was it to see? How important is it for the veterans, the top guys that we're accustomed to over the last decade or 2 to get back to that top and really show, okay, Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, William Byron, we're back?
Yes, this was definitely needed for the veterans because the young guys were really taking over. Kyle Larson was the winningest driver for the first 6 races of all the race wins, and there were 6 different. So there was a lot of parity to start the season, more than maybe we've ever seen in the history of NASCAR, to be honest. I mean, maybe we kind of thought that started last season, then, well, Kyle Larson just took over the summer, just winning race after race. If not for a flat tire, he would have won 4 races in a row, if not for a flat tire at Pocono. So it was important. It was also important for the Toyotas to finally get some confidence. They really struggled at Daytona. Yes, Truex did sweep both stages, but holy crap, stage 3 was a disaster. And if not for a Bubba Wallace runner-up, that race would have gone horrendously for Toyota, if not for a Bubba Wallace runner-up. Now, Kurt Busch, in some ways, has been the best Toyota to start the season with 2 top 5 finishes in his first season with 23-11. He's been great. But Denny Hamlin, no top 10s for the first 6 races, and then he gets a victory. That's a massive confidence booster. He is now truly locked in. And when you saw him jump out of his car, he looked as passionate as I've ever seen him.
He was fired up. Someone is not happy about the results he's been putting out, and to see him get that win and the way he did it. I mean, it's nice to see a driver get that fired up. You don't really see it. They're like, they get out of the car, like, okay, yeah, we're accustomed to this. I haven't really seen a driver that fired up after a win since Kurt Busch beat out Kyle Busch at Kentucky in 2019. It's really the rare times it's when you see drivers really show their emotion after, and that's what we need more of. You see IndyCar guys, you see F1 guys, even in the trucks and Xfinity, they're fired up after wins. Cup guys are more like, okay, we should be here, but enjoy the win. They don't happen. You're not going to be Richard Petty and win 200 races in Cup. You're not going to be Kyle Busch and win, over 100 at the Xfinity level. You just enjoy all your wins. Enjoy the moment. We want to see that. That's what new fans and even the fans of NASCAR for decades, that's what we want to see. Just some emotions. Show that personality side. It's there. These drivers have them. They've shown them before, but do it in front of everyone.
I agree. Like, okay, so for example, after Scott McLaughlin won the St. Petersburg Grand Prix, like he looked as overjoyed as any driver I've ever seen win a race. And that was the first IndyCar race of the season. And even Joseph Newgarden, a 2-time champion for IndyCar, was extremely pumped up after he won at Texas, one of the most thrilling finishes you'll ever see in motorsports. My gosh. Yes, Denny Hamlin winning, showing great emotion was fantastic. However, we need to pump the brakes here just a little bit, because short tracks are, in my opinion, very heavily designed for the top teams, because there's less margin for error, and usually the top teams have the best equipment. They have the best minds to work on the cars, and they have the best strategy. So I think with the next couple races being a short tracks like Martinsville, Bristol Dirt, you're really going to see the cream of the crop go to the front. But let's not say that this is going to be a trend going forward, because I'll tell you what, that ain't going to be the case at Talladega. Because watch an RFK driver win a race, which shout out to RFK, like strong running today for RFK after a dismal start to the season.
Not the best finishes. They finished 13th and 15th, Keselowski and Buescher respectively. But I mean, that's big positive signs for RFK after some tough runs to start the season.
Yes. But yeah, Talladega's not going to be different. And what about the other road courses? None of the top, except for Chase Elliott, who was running in P4, none of the top drivers were really in contention to win at COTA. Or what about Auto Club? Do you want me to go through that top 5? Because except for Kyle Larson, that was not a superstar laden top 5. Also, who are the top 3 drivers at Phoenix? So I think short tracks are going to be geared more toward the top drivers, but Talladega, road courses, and I think Darlington too. I think we're going to have a driver like Tyler Reddick win at Darlington. It's a very driver-friendly track. So I think what this result shows is not that, this season's going to be taken over by the cream of the crop. No, it's that short tracks specifically are going to have the results we expect. That's how I view this, just because of all the technicality that goes into short tracks.
How much trouble is what's the all right? I won't say how much trouble. What would be your panic meter right now for Bubba Wallace? Because it has been ugly since the second place finish in the Daytona 500. Best finish was 13th at Atlanta, but that car was totaled, and Atlanta is now a super speedway. Outside of that, 19th at Auto Club after, having a pure, I mean, I guess you could say Aston Martin now because we can't say Haas anymore because Haas is now scoring points.
P5.
25th in crash at Las Vegas, 22nd at Phoenix, 38th DNF at Coda, 26th today at Richmond. Results are not good. They're flatlined from last year, from his years at RPM. It's just, we expect good results. Not, I would say, top 10 results maybe, but you've got to be running consistently in the top 15 now. Kurt Busch, probably leads the Cup Series in green flag passes and quality passes. That man can go from 35th and then some out of nowhere, he's got a top 5 finish, which is what he was doing outside of his mechanical issues. 2311, yes, they've gone through their mechanical issues, but Bubba consistently just not putting up great results. And that pressure is going to keep mounting until the results come. I'm a fan of Bubba. I think he's a good driver, but with either it's a 2311 thing or it's a driver thing. We've seen Kurt Busch rally and get good finishes. Bubba has had moments where, because I think I want to say he was running well at Las Vegas and then got caught up in that wreck. He's had his bad luck. But again, the people outside of NASCAR that want to cheer for Bubba, they will drop him just like that because NASCAR, they won't retain their attention as much. There's so many other sports they could watch. Someone in the NBA, the NFL, I guess you could say Major League Baseball, but we know that's tanking. But let's say football and basketball. If you have a bad game or bad 5-6 games, people will still, okay, we can wait for the playoffs. That's not how this works in NASCAR. There's so many months within the season. You will get dropped. People will stop caring about you if those results don't start showing up. And they can't just show up at Daytona, at Talladega. Now, I guess you can say at Atlanta. They have to show up at every track now. This is your second year at 2311. Either 2311's they're working with their cars. They're not either clicking on all cylinders, but we're seeing teams improving on all scales. Trackhouse through the roof right now. RFK, better signs today than they've had all year. Joe Gibbs back out front. And with that, team up with Joe Gibbs, you would expect, okay, 2311 to follow, but they could have had mechanical issues, whatever. But Bubba's results aren't showing. So, Sean, what do we make of Bubba's start to this season?
And I want to add to that he was a non-factor in the Xfinity race at Coda when he is in the number 18 car, which has proven to be very fast. And other drivers such as Trevor Bayne and John Hunter Nemechek, who we'll talk about a little later, have shown grit and speed in that car. I think what Bubba's problem is, I think it's a psychological thing. Because think about this. If you're really good at a particular thing, you like to focus on that, right? It's only fair, right? I think Bubba thinks too much about super speedway races. I think the problem is that he knows he's going to be in contention for wins at super speedway races. He was in contention to win in Atlanta, then he got wrecked. He was half a car length from winning the biggest race in North American racing. And what's coming up in a couple weeks? Talladega. And now with Atlanta being a super speedway, and there's still another race at Daytona and Talladega, that's what his focus is. And I think he knows that, okay, I will go all out with these super speed racing in the playoffs. I just don't think that enough effort is being put in for these other, especially road courses. I feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like the 2311 team is like, yeah, we don't care about road courses. Like whatever with that. Even Toyotas are usually like that too. Because when was the last time like a Toyota won road course? Truex at Sonoma. Probably legitimately the last time that happened. So I just think
Christopher Bell, Daytona Road Course.
Oh, that's right. I apologize. I forgot about that. But even still, Toyotas are not specialized in road course. That's more of a Team Hendrick thing. And, well, now Team Trackhouse, apparently. So I just think that Bubba focuses too much on super speedways. I think that he needs to get that fire under him for those intermediate tracks, for those short tracks. It's not exactly great short track racing either. It's always those super speedways where he's at the front. Always.
Yep, and we're 7 races in, and we're one new winner in 2022 away from already having half the playoff field set. And that playoff already has Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric, maybe guys you didn't have on your list, at least maybe 2/3 of them you didn't have on your list for the playoffs coming into this season. So we may think, oh, it's still early, there's still a lot of time, but now it's gonna be like Talladega might be a must win for Bubba if these are going to be the results moving forward.
Or the Daytona night race to end the regular season.
Yeah, but that's the last regular season race. I don't know if you can wait until then.
Well, he did in 2020. We all know how that went.
The Xfinity race, pretty much the exact same. You know, a lot of slow racing, a lot of, okay, we know the two guys are. It's going to be Ty Gibbs and John Hunter Nemechek. Question is, who's going to be the guy at the end? And there was both of them. Ty Gibbs and John Hunter Nemechek battled hard for the victory over the last 15, 20 laps. They were side by side for the last two. Ty Gibbs had the preferred line on the inside going to the final corner and completely missed the corner, whether it be unintentionally or intentional. Missed the corner, pretty much used John Hunter Nemechek, a teammate, as a break, and went on to win the race. Clearly, John Hunter Nemechek wasn't happy. They'll talk out in the team meetings and whatever, but Sean, Ty Gibbs, you can't deny the talent. He's got 3 wins already in the Xfinity Series season, but getting under the skin of almost every driver on the circuit. I mean, this guy's going to get called up the Cup soon. If he wins the title, I would not be surprised if Joe Gibbs is like, I want my grandson in one of those cars. You don't perform well or you don't expect. I mean, you could be Christopher Bell, Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, Hamilton, whichever one. They're all could be on the hot seat. I don't think any one of them is going to go. But if Ty Gibbs dominates, wins like 10 races this year, plus the title, why not move him up? But again, I want to go back. We got to go back and discuss Ty Gibbs as a driver, that moment with John Hunter Nemechek, because not only is he stirring the pot with just his fellow competitors, he's stirring the pot amongst his team. And while he's lucky to have Joe Gibbs as his grandfather, and his grandfather probably won't care as long as he's not wrecking his cars. I mean, this is a guy that is going to polarize NASCAR for the next 2 decades, and I don't see it slowing down. I think he's a good kid, but when it comes to making on-track decisions that are the smartest, he could have raced John Hunter Nemechek at the end and beat him out in a side-by-side photo finish, whatever. But I mean, he didn't make the corner. I don't think he had intentions to make the corner, like John Hunter said, and just ran him up the track, used him as a break, and that was it. And the principle of it, I'm not a fan of it, but it gets people talking. And that's what we need in NASCAR. Rivalries need to be started somewhere. If it happens to be within your team or outside of your team, doesn't really matter. We need that. We need sort of anti-heroes. And Ty Gibbs right now is that anti-hero of NASCAR for the time being. But for the principle of racing's sake, I didn't like the move. In terms of talking points, like we can talk about it right now. Love the move. But in the principle of racing and watching it for almost 2 decades now, not a fan of it.
Why?
Because you can't, in racing, unless I'm trying to win the championship. If that was a championship move, so be it. You know, there's a trophy on the line. I'm trying to become the champion of the series. But just race them out. Sure, if you get B, you get B. You already got your 2 wins this season. Like, you're not losing anything by not. Sure, you got to go for the win. But I prefer it be okay. If you're gonna bump and run him. I don't need you just missing the corner entirely, using another driver as a break, and just running your way over to the victory. To me, that's just not racing. That's just okay. I'm gonna do whatever I want because it's my road, my track. I've got the preferred line, so let me just do whatever. At least make the corner. If you guys want to bump and bang all the way to the finish line, go ahead. But you've got to make the corner.
I'm very perplexed right now.
You have to make the corner. Look, I said for talking points, like we're talking about it right now, I'm fine with the move. In the principle of racing, not a fan of the move, and it doesn't help that it's Ty Gibbs that made a decision.
Okay, what do you mean principle of racing? This is a short track. Where this
short track anywhere. Even if, let's say, it was, I don't know, Michigan or something, and John Hunter forced them down low. still, I mean, Ty Gibbs at a track like that could just run him up the track and boom, race is over from there. But
Okay.
I just think you can race it out. If you get beat, you get beat. But let's have one-on-one and not, okay, I'm going to purposely miss the corner, use him as a break, run him up the track, and just, ruin his day, essentially, even though he still finished second.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think there's an issue here. I think that there is this. I think it's psychological. I think that Ty Gibbs has already established himself as an aggressive driver, the new Joey Logano, basically, somebody who is being aggressive, but he's a nice kid off the track. And I think that that's clouding everyone's judgment. I saw nothing wrong with. I watched it 100.
I don't care who it was. I don't care if it was Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, whatever, Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, whatever. I'm still gonna say I'm not a fan of the move in general, just because I just think you can race it out side by side to line, and then it's best driver takes it all. I just don't think that was a racing move.
It's a short track. Contact happens all the time. Lines and corners happens all the time. Like
Ty Gibbs was making the corners the last 20 laps of the race.
So, I mean, he had to do what he had to do. He got passed by John Hunter and was like, you're not taking this win from me. I'm going to bump you, and I'm going to take this myself. That is classic short track racing. There's no problem with this whatsoever.
It's not Gordon Rusty at Bristol. That was a racing move. This to me was not. If you can get behind someone and just move them out of the way, that's a racing move. Using someone as a brake,
that's a racing
That's
move.
not a racing. No, it's not a racing move.
Yes, it is.
It's not a racing move.
Yes,
it's
it
really
is.
Not. No, it's not.
Because you're using your opponent as leverage to get past him. I see nothing wrong with that. That's a short track move. Like we all love the bump and run at short track. This is what that was.
Okay, let's say their final corner at Monza. Whoever they're side by side. They're side by side. No. Let me finish. They're side by side in that corner specifically. Granted, would it ever happen? Probably not. But let's just say, under any circumstance, two drivers at Monza on the final lap in that fast final corner are side by side, and one driver says, "You know what? I'm going to run this dude all the way up into the track, up into the wall, make him, tap the wall, touch the wall, whatever, or make him back out of it." Is that a racing move in your opinion?
How is that comparable? F1 cars are going twice as fast as the cars at Richmond. And also,
so you're saying in terms of how fast they're going, that now determines whether or not it's clean. You think it's clean or not?
F1 cars are nowhere near as built to handle bump and run contact as NASCARs. But also, I didn't say twice as fast.
But I didn't say bump him. I said if he keeps running him up further and further up the track, and the guy has no other choice, and then just break.
Okay, so no contact. No
get
contact.
Out of the wall. Well, obviously they're not going to try to make contact, but let's say you just keep riding them. They keep just moving them higher and higher up the groove.
You do
and
know
that person has no other choice but to back out. Or they all wreck.
You mean what Max did to Lewis like half the season last year? Is exactly what you're describing to me. That's exactly what you just described as what Max did to Lewis like half the season last year.
You be the judge.
Well, I am the judge here, and for the most part, remember on the first lap at Imola, Verstappen ran Lewis off into the curb.
Was that clean?
Yes.
That was clean. You're telling me that was clean. Yes. Max running Lewis off the course was clean.
What Max did at Brazil was not clean, because that was he tapped him and ran him all the way up into the.
So it was clean when it was at Imola, when Lewis clearly got ran off the track, but it's not okay when it's at Brazil. What defines that?
Because of where the wall is. Like, if you're gonna run somebody,
but does that matter?
Yes.
Who cares? What about this bull of just doing it in the first place? How about just race it out?
Obviously, we prefer that, but sometimes you got to get dirty. And we're talking about Richmond, where the cars barely go over 100 miles per hour.
But again, I'm going back to, does speed matter in this equation?
Yes, because we're talking about safety here.
Is
Because
it
like John Hunter, because like when Ty made contact with John Hunter Nemechek,
so you don't believe in that there should be sort of these unwritten rules, this code of NASCAR,
it
where it's
depends
okay,
on the
everyone's got
track.
to.
If this was Daytona, I would scream at Ty Gibbs.
How about just a code of just clean, hard fought racing?
I don't think there's an objective code. I think it depends on the track and the style of racing. Because if Ty Gibbs were to do that at Daytona, Ty Gibbs should be parked for the next race. But for Richmond,
You're not going to miss the corner at Daytona though on purpose. That's not a thing.
well, if you run somebody into the wall at Daytona, you should be parked for the next race. But at Richmond, where you're barely going over highway speed, who cares? It's a Richmond.
Okay, you heard it here first from Sean. That will do it for this edition of the Rich Report. All of our socials are linked in the description and obviously right here on our nameplates. Be sure to go check out the website as well. We got that linked as well. Please go subscribe to the Substack. A lot of great written content from so many good writers. And we've got NBA and NHL playoffs coming up on the horizon. You know we're going to preview every single series that's coming up. It's going to be one hell of a playoff season coming up. And later on during the week, probably Thursday, we're going to post a video previewing the racing ahead. And we've got an action-packed weekend. NASCAR, F1, IndyCar, all in action. We can't wait to cover it all. For Sean Clark, I'm Cameron Richardson. We will see you guys in the next video.